Broadcasting live from atop the Rocky Mountains, the crossroads of the West. You are listening to the Liberty Roundtable Radio Talk Show.
Happy to have you along, my fellow Americans. We hope you had an incredible weekend. I know I did, full of God, family, and country, and hope the same was true for you. Yeah, we're going to talk about Donald Trump accounts for kids. We're also going to talk about computers in education. Yeah, you got to ask yourself a question. Are Chromebooks ruining education? We'll get to it all, and the broadcast starts now. Dr. Scott Bradley with me, freedomsrisingsun.com. Check out his weekly webinars, Q&As on the Constitution and more every Thursday evening, 7 p.m. Mountain Time. But you got to go to freedomsrisingsun.com, get your ticket to ride, if you will. There you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Look for Freedom's Call, and you can find it. And it's really educational because you know, the professor literally doubles down. The doctor just kind of lays it out constitutionally, every topic under the sun. And then Friday mornings, we usually, get a couple of tidbits from his Thursday night webinars. And we talk about them on the air because that really is a unique part. The Liberty Roundtable concept that I came up with years and years and years ago has to do with, it's not just Sam babbling, although he does plenty of that, I do that. But really what the goal is to bring all kinds of organizations to the table and to hear from the American people. This webinar that Scott does every week is really driven by the public asking questions. We the people pitching in, and then Dr. Bradley responds. And so we do that because it lets people, just the average American people, get their kind of word in edgewise on the show. We bring up their topics, things they're concerned about, things they're wondering about, things they want clarity on, or, sometimes they even don't really have a question, but they have a comment about a topic that's so vital and their comment is so spot on. We use those as well. So without further ado, anyway, check out the...
Sam, I may just mention something here about that kind of reinforces what you just said. It's funny, not funny, I guess. It's really quite fascinating to me how many of the questions that come up are kind of harbingers of the next several days' news. And there are people that are paying attention. There's people that have got questions. And I don't know if I want to say absolutely shocked, but I'm amazed that that the next day, so Friday morning, Saturday, Sunday, very often we see the subject matter that came up in the Q&A as being front and center on some of the, the news channels. And so it's pretty interesting that, either they're listening to us or maybe some people are listening to what's happening on to the point that they can ask questions about it before it hits the front pages.
Well, and that just proves they're listening to us. They're also listening to other newsmakers, news the networks refuse to use all over the place. The new media is taking center stage, and your point proves it. So that's kind of exciting as well. But we love to hear from the people. We love to talk to the people. We want to interact in productive ways, civil ways, but yet at the same time be very clear and hard-hitting on the news to make sure that everybody understands what's happening. I've got two big topics for the good doctor today. First one, Kevin O'Leary discusses Trump accounts with the NTV's Mary Otsu is her name. So Mary's a journalist, and she interviewed Kevin O'Leary. Just for everybody's understanding, Kevin O'Leary is a Canadian businessman. He's a TV personality. He's an investor. He's been, one of the keys for Shark Tank and many other kind of venues. And so they discuss these Trump accounts. Trump accounts are a proposal by Donald Trump. They say to give every child a government-funded, locked investment account at birth. They say this will allow long-term growth. They can make money. They can build, opportunity through long-term, gaining of interest, et cetera, instead of relying on short-term aid. So they're kind of assuming everybody's going to need help in the future economy. And that's kind of a big red flag that I throw up right now and saying, by Donald doing this, he's telling me that, people are going to be poor. Kids aren't going to have wherewithal. And the only way to stop the continued devaluation of the dollar and the third world country status we're kind of devolving into, sadly, would be to put these things in place by your government, right? But it reminds me a little bit of the Social Security program. How long will it will it be until Congress raids those accounts? That's another big concern. But let's listen to Kevin, because he does have a little bit of good news to some degree in this. Then we'll talk about it with the doctor.
On the call of duty, because he's providing it to every child that might have been born pre this period. And he's contributing over $6 billion. He's sort of leading the way corporately as an example, and I think it's fantastic what he's done. I really think that this is how a country heals itself. When it's broken and when Social Security is being questioned and the future of it being questioned, this is a pivot towards a different way of solving the problem, which makes so much sense. Most people understand the merit of this, even if they don't understand the inner workings of the market. You don't need to understand the inner workings. You just know that it's working for you. And that's 110 million people that don't have any plan for their future in America.
Kevin's pointing to Michael Dell of, the Dell Computer Company, who's putting in a bunch of money and really doubling down on this thing. And I really commend private sector people, philanthropists and everything else that are, deciding, hey, they want to be involved. My concern, though, is that the core of it is government-created, government-funded, government-controlled. Yeah, big business are partnering with it. But again, it reminds me of the fascist idea where we say, hey, you own everything. You're in charge, private people. But yet the government's got its finger on the pulse or on the lever of everything related to it. So it's government-controlled, supposedly privately owned. If they call these Trump accounts, it'll really be a government account with government putting money in, the taxpayers funding it. And then it'll be, big business adding money to the pie. And then Dr. Bradley warned of something right before the pause. Doctor, it sounds good. And in a way, it's better than just government. But at the same time, to me, this is riddled with concern.
It's wrong-headed in every single way, except this Dell thing. Now, I don't know if Dell is contributing to the general fund that'll go to everybody that gets an account. Or what I suspect will happen is that you'll have private industry that will say, oh, if you work for our company and you have a kid, by the way, I think the window for what Trump has proposed is, I don't look carefully at it, but it's probably 18 months born between this period and this period. I think it ends like on July 4th of this year, perhaps, or something. I mean, it's not an ongoing account kind of thing, but it is an extended period for every baby that's born. At least from my understanding, will get this government-funded account. I've got a lot of questions for it. It's like the source of all these
It reminds
funds.
me a little bit of Animal Farm, though. Everybody's equal, but some people are just a little more equal there, Doctor.
Well, that's maybe true, but here's one of the principal concerns is Article 1, Section 9, Clause 7. It says in that interesting little clause of just about two barely fine lines that are in these little pocket constitutions you have, no money shall be drawn from the treasury but in consequence of appropriation made by law. Now,
you mean Congress?
I'd say again?
Congress, you mean?
Yeah. Who makes the laws? All legislative authority herein granted. It's in the legislative body. And I'm saying, where in tarnation does Trump think he can suddenly come up with $1,000 for every kid that's born during this window of opportunity? Now, the private money is an interesting kind of concept, and if businesses, and I suspect most of the donations for across the board industry-wise will probably be related to the employment of the parent. And so, but Dell maybe, I don't know enough about what his offering is, but it's a very generous offering, and if he's subsidizing everything, that's fine. But the fact of the matter is, this is something that should be worked out between the employer and the employee. And I'm wondering where the legislative authority to do this has originated, where it was created by law, and how Trump can suddenly decide I've got $1 bazillion I'm going to put in private bank accounts. This is astounding to me. It's another. I think it will become kind of a one of those untouchable benefit kind of programs that are entitlements that people will never let go of. And that's just the nature
and the
of
reason
these
why
things.
is because they'll always say it's about the children, Doctor. How dare you defund? How dare you decouple anything from the children? And that's how they go down this road. But I look at it and say, right now it's just a proposal, right? It's not a law. It's not even happening yet, is it? It's being talked about.
Well, And the reason I chew my tongue is because everything Trump does is long on promise and short on details. And it's kind of like this 1776 tax refund rebate, hug and a kiss that for all the military personnel. Article 1, Section 9, Clause 7 again comes into it. Where do you get this kind of authority? You're not a monarch. It's just absurd to me.
Well, Congress missing in action. We'll tell you that. Hang tight, more in second. All right, we're talking about these Donald Trump accounts. They're called the Trump accounts. They're a proposal to give every child a government-funded locked investment account at birth, allowing long-term growth. They say it'll be awesome. Kevin O'Leary, well-known businessman, discussing Trump accounts with NTV's Mariatsu, and he's basically saying they're great. This is an awesome way that the country can heal. I think it sounds good on the surface, but when you dig in, you go, wait a minute, how do these government accounts get created? Congress didn't do anything yet. In fact, they're derelict in their duty and missing in action, Dr. Scott Bradley.
Yeah, we haven't seen too much productivity. I mean, and you say, oh, well, how do you measure productivity? Well, it's the number of bills you get through, isn't it? No, it's not. It's the performance of delegated authority based upon the contract they all signed and took an oath to uphold. And if you look at their performance based upon that, they ain't accomplished much in the past year. I mean, Trump's been in just over a year now, a year and a week roughly. And I just, it almost seems like the legislature has been sitting there twiddling their thumbs, and they might come to work a lot, but they're also gone an awful lot. They leave town and they go out. They're going to be campaigning all this year, because they got this big election.
Donald even has left his international efforts. Now he's campaigning. Nothing domestic for the American people, just international, and then go back and start campaigning. They're all campaigning.
Well, that's the problem. Is I think, and that's based on the questions that we're getting when they, we do webinar stuff, and based upon everything indicates that the Republicans are going to get spanked come the November election, and everybody's going, oh, it's a long time till then. No, it's not. You got a few months, my friends, and the people are going to get more and more focused. And when if they haven't even very well discovered or at least discussed the issues. I mean, it's one side hates Trump and the other side.
These bank accounts are an example. Are we just going to basically say that they exist and have people fund them and everything else? It's just going to be on Donald's word?
Well, so far, like I say, long on promise. I mean, whether it's Greenland or whether it's Ukraine or whether it's the peace board or whether it's these funded things that we're redistributing your wealth to another generation. I mean, it's so astounding to me is that, we're robbing all the time future generations based upon our profligate spending. Now we're going to add to that spending, and the kids that are getting the accounts, maybe, just maybe, there won't even be enough in the account to pay the interest on what our big debt is. It's just, it just doesn't make any sense. There's no connect the dots going on at the senior level of management.
Well, and where is the money going to come from? And they're already taxing us to oblivion. Okay, and Donald wants us to believe somehow magically he can put $1,000 in every kid's account. How long will that last for? And if it only lasts for a little bit, so you're telling me a little blip of people in the middle of something get these accounts? I guess I'm saying I don't see a long-term reality for this. I see nothing but stealing more from the taxpayers. Yes, the private sector like Michael Dell can put in a bunch of money, and that's to be commended, except for if you tie it to a parent's employment or something like that, then at some point only the few get it at the expense of the many. Whether it's private or government controlled, privately owned, or whether it's a government account. But my problem is every bucket of my money, if you're an accountant, you speak in buckets, right? There's a budget or a bucket for this, a bucket for that. Every bucket's getting controlled by the general government pretty soon. It'll be like, I got to have an HSA for my health care. I got to have a child, Trump account for my child. I got to have there's an account that relates to my IRS taxes. There's an account related to my 401k or my IRA or my this or that. And it really seems like government wants to control every stream of my income virtually by edict, by mandate, by law, by control, by downstream, because oftentimes Congress launches something and then these agencies, make their own decisions and make their own rules and laws. And unconstitutional is all get out. We thought that got repudiated a year or so ago when they got rid of, I can't remember what it's called, but they got rid of the government allowing that to happen. But yet it's continuing. No one's really getting arrested. None of these programs are being stopped. So every bucket of my money is going to be controlled if we let this continue, Doctor.
Well, there's so many things about this. For example, I'd like to just control my own bucket. Let me go do that.
Oh, wow.
But if you have these established accounts, okay, so they're probably going to be reported on year by year to the IRS on your tax status. So you're going to find that everybody knows every account and wherever it is at all times, and they're always accessible to prying eyes and prying potential government programs. The big problem, one of the big problems we've got is most of the time to the legislature, we look to them as a resource source, and we're not totally tapped. We're not totally allocated. And so they're looking for another way to get deeper in our pockets, ultimately and finally, and they'll have access to every single aspect of our lives, health insurance, car insurance. I mean, you get pulled over by a police officer, they've got access to your insurance records. And we've talked about some of these integrating kinds of software that as they take your license plate number, they do a lookup on everything else that has to do anything with you. It is just astounding. Like I say, let me earn my bucket, and then let me go spend my bucket the way I want to, and quit having government have to take a piddling little here and a piddling little there, and pretty soon its whole buckets of everything has been absconded with. And it's like this Somali nonsense that's going on in so many states, and it's just not Somalis. They have free money. Oh, just apply for grants. And first thing you know, it's like, well, if there's free money out there, let's take two. And before you know it, there's people that are taking, and none of it's justified. None of it is legal. Constitutionally, it's unconstitutional to redistribute any kind of funding from any kind of source.
And it's bad enough when Congress does it unconstitutionally, at least the legislative branch. But if we skip Congress and do it, it's like insult to injury. The issue, though, is what will this money primarily be used for? Answer, you get it when you turn 18, and I don't know how the draws will work or anything else, but really what it's going to do is fund education for these people. So, Donald, on one hand, wants you to believe the general government's getting out of education. They'll get out of education. They'll just assign half the critical components to other departments and pretend they've got out of education, but then they'll control the money, which will eventually relate to education. They're not getting out of education at all, and this is somewhat proof. That's primarily what the money will be designated for and eventually controlled to be, hey, here's your education fund, kid. So now we got general government funding control of education at the federal level. We can let go of all the details as long as we control the money, Doctor.
Well,
isn't that the con game?
Well, that's the way wars are fought and everything. They control their money. It's interesting to me, one good benefit, I don't know if I'm just looking for a little lemonade out of this thing. People, if they really put the pencil to it, or calculator, because most people don't use a pencil anymore, and say, okay, I get $1,000 when I'm born. By the time I'm 18, how much is that going to be worth at 2% interest in my credit union? I mean, it's pretty skinny resources that are coming in on interest on a $1,000 deposit, and you're going to find that people are going, holy cow, I lost more to inflation than I did. Inflation and taxes probably ate up all the interest anyway. So,
and then you're going to have fees for people to administer the account. Then they're going to have downstream. I don't know who's going to manage all these accounts. Is it going to be a new government agency? But somebody eventually will make these, internal departmental rules and guidelines and regulations. And I mean, think about a 401k. Everybody applauded that, but now you got to be 59 and a half. Just think about that. You got to be 59 and a half to start tapping your 401k, Doctor, if you have one. And so 59 and a half, let's see, I'm 58, I'll be 59 in July. So come January 27, I'll be 59 and a half, I can start tapping at my 401k there, Doctor. Where do they come up with this stuff? It used to be 62, you retired. Now it's like, you can get Social Security at 62, but don't take it till you're like 70, because that's when the real payouts happen. And now they're just basically up in the ages. Pretty soon they'll be like, hey, You can take your account at 18, but it's about to go bankrupt. You can't take your account until you're 21 now. It's just all that kind of stuff where I just go, the devil's in the details for sure, Doctor.
Well, there are no details as part of the problem.
Not yet, but there will be. Right. And I doubt Congress or anybody in the legislative authority will be making up those details.
You're probably right. And the fact is, is your income from that taxable now, or is it going to be untaxed or whatever by the time you're 18? It's kind of like tax on Social Security. And then suddenly entitlement programs raise their ugly head, and suddenly everybody can't live without it. And it's kind of like these Obamacare subsidies that they shut the government down for the length of time that they did, where it's like, oh no, you can't take this away from us. We deserve this, and these kind of things are just. It's kind of like I say, the devil's in the details. And once the seed gets planted, the weed gets pretty tall.
There you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Kevin O'Leary is being pretty positive about Michael Dell chiming in. And no doubt the private sector and business should be investing in the next generation. That's where their employees are going to come from. So I don't have any problem with organizations on a charitable, left alone outside of government to support children, whether it be through internships or whether it be through apprenticeships or, all those things are good. But when it's all controlled by the government, we pretend this is private sector and we pretend this is awesome. But I'm telling you, it's going to be another government boondoggle program that we're going to wish we could end. Then there'll be a politician that'll promise we'll end it, but it'll never happen. It'll just morph into a more sinister plan, which is what I see education doing in this case. You're going to have government now with these accounts controlling education, which means education will cost more because everybody will have some money, right? And we just continue to exacerbate and make the problem much worse. All right, when we get back, I want to talk about Chromebooks. They're ruining education, many people claim. I personally agree they're correct. We'll talk about the pros and cons. We'll talk about just technology in education for that matter. Dr. Bradley with me, freedomsrisingsun.com. You're watching Liberty Roundtable Live. Back with you live. Dr. Scott Bradley's with me, freedomsrisingsun.com, his website. Check out his weekly webinars and his incredible To Preserve the Nation collegiate series, all available at freedomsrisingsun.com. So, Chromebooks are ruining education. There's a whole promo on the internet where they're basically making these claims and everything else. There's a lot of pros and cons. There's the case against Chromebooks. There's the case for Chromebooks. They say they encourage passive consumption over real creation. Most Chromebook workflows rely on web apps and templates. And so, hey, they limit real problem solving and coding and other kind of knowledge that people get from technology. They lower academic expectations at scale. So they basically kind of fit the, education to, work well with the device more than what's really needed for education. They weaken true digital literacy. Students learn to navigate lockdown platforms. They don't really learn to understand how files and operating systems and folders and, they don't understand the workings of anything because it's all just top level. They entrench surveillance-based schooling. They have monitoring, software, activity tracking, data collection. It normalizes constant government surveillance while at the same time reducing autonomy and really eroding trust. They turn education into a, quote, testing pipeline. Chromebooks are optimized for standardized assessments, folks. They take away a lot of the curiosity and the thinking. Okay, that's the negative. The positive, though, they dramatically expand access. Chromebooks are affordable, durable, easy to deploy, putting a functional device in almost everybody's hands. They reduce technical friction because they have automatic updates, fast startup. Then the teachers can focus on instruction instead of being, bogged down with the technology. They support modern collaboration. Okay. They level the classroom, they say. Students work on the same platform with the same exact situations. Therefore, everybody gets kind of a fair, equal starting point. They align with today's workforce tools. Many jobs rely on browser-based softwares and shared documents and remote collaboration. So there's a lot of good to the Chromebooks, the opponents say. Let's watch this video, then we'll get a breakdown from Dr. Scott Bradley, and then you can get my take on this thing in detail. Here we go.
For 25 years, I've watched education change, evolve, reinvent itself, and on more occasions than I'd like to admit, education has chased shiny nonsense. And from experiencing all of that, I'm going to say this as clearly as I possibly can. Chromebooks are killing education. And this is not coming from some technophobic teacher clutching a chalkboard. I teach K through 8 computer science. I believe in technology. I have taught kids to code, debug, use Google Docs, Google Slides, Google Classroom, to problem solve and create. I remember when computers were a privilege, not a pacifier. And I feel like that is really the difference right now. Chromebooks were supposed to be tools. Instead, they have become crutches and babysitters. Digital worksheets with better branding. We have handed kids screens before they could even hold a pencil properly. And then we act shocked that attention spans have evaporated. And frustration tolerance has hit 0. I have watched students who can swipe, tap, and close pop-ups with Olympic-level speed, but can't write a paragraph to save their life, or follow multi-step directions, or sit with a problem without instantly asking, is there a video for this? Paper slows the brain down in a good way. Pencils create the friction that thinking needs. Books require patience, stamina, and imagination. Screens train kids to expect instant answers, dopamine hits, and endless stimulation. And then we wonder why school feels boring and hard. And don't even get me started on kindergartners with Chromebooks. 5-year-olds do not need personal laptops. They need scissors and crayons and blocks and conversations and play, a whole lot of it. Developmentally, screens are skipping steps. And those skipped steps are now showing up as behavior problems, anxiety, and academic gaps later. And here's the irony, because there is always irony. We killed the computer lab in the name of one-to-one devices. And in doing so, we killed actual computer skills. Kids do not know how to type properly. They don't understand file systems. They don't know how computers fundamentally work. They just know how to click next or scroll up. Let's bring back the computer lab. Make technology intentional again. Teach kids when to use tech, not just how. Chromebooks should be a tool used sometimes with purpose, not the default for everything. Education does not need more screens. It needs more thinking, more writing, more reading, more hands-on learning, and more human interaction. I have seen what school looked like before this experiment, and I'm watching the fallout now. This isn't nostalgia speaking here. This is 25 years of teaching experience. It is beyond time to course correct, especially before we raise a whole generation fluent in apps, but illiterate in focus.
You know, Sam, I don't know if anybody was listening when you talked about the challenges that come with what's there. Now, this guy did a pretty good litany of things himself, but when you were running over the things that were challenges, they were deep and wide. There were fundamental challenges. But I'll tell you what you came up with all the good reasons. I know you had somebody's focus group came up with it or some stupid thing. At any rate, every single one of those was an empty phrase, a euphemism, leveling the classroom. What the heck does that mean? I mean, everything that said, the benefits, it levels the classroom. Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah,
Is it
so
wonderful?
does letting everybody have a pencil.
Well, yeah, that's the problem is we don't have any good reason for this. Now, the problem, let me just give you some real stuff. I mean, people today can't even write a check. I mean, they tap their foot and they go. People today, I got when my dad died some years ago, my little sister's youngest son wanted his letters from the Navy, and so, this is a window back into the 40s and all this kind of stuff. And I thought that's really cool. We had a big bundle of letters from to my dad while he's in the Navy, and I was kind of really happy. This kid, he was in his mid-20s, says, "I want to get Grandpa's letters from the Navy. I want to know what it's about." I says, "Great." So I handed them all to him. The next day, he brought them back to me. He says, "Here they are." So what's wrong? He says, "I can't read cursive." I mean, the fact of the matter is that we are losing fundamental skills. You can't do math. When I was really stupid, when I was young, which I don't know if it's improved that much or not, but when I was really stupid, I decided to ruin one summer by doing 3 quarters. They were a building block set of quarters of physics. I thought if I can knock it off in the summer, when I'm in the middle of the, regular course stuff in the winter, I'll be able to, focus on that. So I signed up for 3 courses to be back to back to back through the summer, 3 months, a month each. Anyway, ruined the summer, absolutely. But what I had was a slide rule. Okay. And at one point, I was able to invest in a 4-function calculator. We're not talking about a scientific calculator or anything like that, but a 4-function calculator. And I thought I'd died and gone to heaven. Still a miserable summer. But at any rate, what I'm saying is that sometimes you got to put something on the line to obtain something. And when we lost the ability, well, it's like this. People say we can't go back to the moon. Why not? We don't know how. Why not? There was a slide rule solution that was come up with during those days. And so we've lost skills, and people are literally saying we can't send a manned mission to the moon because we don't know how. And stuff like that gets lost. I've got, well, one of my doctoral, it was semesters at that time, one class was, the assignment was to read all 20 volumes of Jefferson's collected works, Berg's collected works. What a magnificent insight. But people just, you read a little blurb of something and then you take a quiz, it's ABCD, that's been, basically created to work on a computer. You lose so much. I could go on and on. Education does not know what it's lost in the last 10 years, let alone the last 30 years, 50 years.
And it really brings up the question, does technology belong in education? And I believe it does, because it's such a part of our modern world. But I agree with that, video guy that said, hey, we need to bring back the computer lab. We need to teach people the fundamentals of computers, but we also need to make sure that when kids are too young, it's okay to have a, keyboard typing class so they learn how to type. It's okay but we don't need computers in math. We don't need technology in every subject. You don't need technology in history and math and science and literature. And, you don't need it. In fact, you're better off without it. And I know they'd say, well, to scale, you can get, all these things on the computer and roll it out to everybody all at the same time. And, I can see some minimal advantages. As you wisely point out, the pros are very minimal. They're babble, really. And the negatives are huge. So children need to learn to have conversations. They need to learn to play with blocks. They don't just need to doom scroll from the second they're born right on through. Kids are taught, well, the babysitter's the technology. And that's one of the big criticisms is that, hey, so we need to really think about this. I also don't like technology using one platform. So, teaming up with Mac or teaming up with Google or Apple or this or that. Hey, if you're going to do computers in the later schools, it's like you can't use a calculator for math until you learn how to do it longhand. We need to have that mentality. We'll talk about it more in seconds. Liberty Roundtable Live. But I also say this fundamental idea where, hey, little kids want to use calculators. No, we need to learn how to do it longhand. Little kids want to, get a summary from ChatGPT on a book. No, you got to learn to read the book. And there's, believe it or not, research that shows reading books in print does a lot for your brain that digitally the same things don't happen. And so there's a divide here and a reality that needs to be discussed. I think for the most part, technology in education has its place. But it doesn't mean that technology controls and takes over education entirely. Everything doesn't need to be on the computer. Okay, and we can't use computers as crutches. Now, sure, there can be some value. When you get into high school and you're writing a thesis, there's nothing wrong with using a computer and a word processor to take care of that. When you're in advanced math, calculus, and things, there's nothing wrong with using a calculator to help, some of that along, or physics or whatever. But especially in these younger grades, rolling out technology that's expensive to a bunch of little kids really is causing serious, serious problems. And it's something not being addressed. And I think locally, a lot of people would change that. But when government grants and money and funding come from, the federal government, you've got somebody thousands of miles away literally controlling educational outcomes for the negative, Doctor.
And I think that, and maybe that we could take this far afield, and I often do that, as you know, but I think there's a corollary to this, though, too, that I've been observing. I've looked at a lot of EDAs, a lot of resumes, if you will, for a lot of academic positions. And most of the stuff that I've looked at in recent years is pure Bravo Sierra. It is being created by AI using euphemistic terms for just they're psychobabble. There is really nothing that's coming out. I remember recently reading a woman's her proposal for how she should handle if she got the assignment as a university president. I mean, we're talking about the pinnacle of the university academic world when you're a university president. My impression is that it's far below that, and most people, if they ever understood that, would probably be less likely to send their kids to school because of the exchanges I've had with completely illiterate university level deans and provosts and presidents. But this one in particular that I was just looking at, I was utterly amazed that it could have been written by ChatGPT without even the ChatGPT doing any research. I mean, it was just euphemistic terms strung together, and everybody's going, "Oh my goodness, the emperor's new clothes, how wonderful they are." But they're not. There's nothing that any of us can say that was of any benefit to anybody that was written on that whole review of what this woman thought she was going to do as a university president. I don't know how the people that are supposedly running the education can possibly expect to educate the kids when they themselves are lost in the woods.
Well, and it's a serious issue. I think that again, technology does belong in education, but I think real education would leave technology to be agnostic in the sense that, hey, I can, in the upper grades, I can bring a, Windows computer, a Linux computer, a Mac computer, a Chrome machine or whatever I want to the table. As long as I understand my machine, I should learn all about that in, a computer class or whatever, know how to type. The problem is what these companies want to do is they want to get their technology in early, Doctor. And that's what Chromebooks are kind of about. That's what Apple used to do back in the day too, where they want to basically have you grow up on their devices and their technology, and therefore you're lifelong users. And eventually then, hey, those people become bosses of companies and they mandate, hey, I love Chromebooks. I grew up on a Chromebook. You need to have a Chromebook in your workplace. And oftentimes these companies try to do that. I don't think that schools or technology should be steering towards one, technological solution or another for that matter. Get whatever kind of calculator you want, get whatever kind of computer you want, learn and understand file systems and the principles behind these devices that we use so readily. And, you're not going to take technology out of society. What you can do is teach people to understand technology and think properly and make decisions on their own, not be shoehorned into one technology. And it's like, well, all I know is the Chromebook. I'm 22 years old and all I've used is a Chromebook. That's all I know. We run the risk of those things as well, Doctor.
Well, absolutely. But before we leave this subject, and I know we're again running out of time as usual, there's another really, 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 really critically important discussion that should happen with this technology issue, with the ubiquitous nature of pornography and social media platforms that are, there's everything from the very darkest to the dark web and clear on through, what supercomputers can do, trying to do a genome mapping, whatever. But the fact of the matter is that most of these kids, when they get technology in their hands, it's not much more than a matter of days, maybe even hours or even minutes before they have been, click, click, click. And pretty soon you've got a really, really destructive element of society that they're being exposed to. And I don't know if there's truly a way to inoculate the kids and or prevent through some kind of firewall or something. As I watch kids, and they're far more computer savvy than I am, so it doesn't take much to baffle me. But the fact of the matter is, pornography is a dark, dark, destructive. Relationships that are destroyed, perverse things that get planted in brains. To me, it's something that I don't think we spend enough time preventing because I wish there was time to tell you with the depth that I could. Someone that had worked with an awful lot of young men was counseling with one of my granddaughters because my granddaughter's a sweet, beautiful, lovely, amazing girl, And they were concerned, and they said that 97% of the young men that they had worked with were addicted to pornography. 97%. That's as bad as the destruction of the dollar since 1913. If 97% of these guys, and we're not talking about gangsters and thugs, we're talking about guys that ostensibly were, fine, upstanding young men. If that is that deeply entrenched in our youth today, I'm very concerned about the moral standing that we can even hope to prepare for the return of our Savior. So,
well, you're right about that. And, I'm writing a book, as you know, Doctor. And the book that I'm writing is about done. It's called A Clarion Call for Civility. And in that book, I talk about the importance of character. And you cannot create character by mandate, by law. You can force people to do things or not do things temporarily. But the only way that real character is built, the only way people really gain a moral relevancy and a moral stand is if they're taught that in their home by their parents and things. And so part of the concern that I have is this technology controlled by the government schools. They're going to put things on your computer that they want you to consume, learn about, promote, and they're going to deny things on computers. So my book, for example, would never be read, for example, in these schools. And so it's not only a framework of technology we're talking about, but it's what will be fed to them in the consumer world that we're in via this technology that's of greater concern. Even so, certain books will be on the machine, certain books won't be, and then it's like, Johnny, you can pick from these 5 books on your computer. Whoa, hold on, wait a minute. Okay, and so we're really losing a lot of our autonomy, and we've really got to take it back to the local level. And these computers on the that are consistent, or whatever you want to say, ubiquitous across education, and then funded by and controlled by the government, pretty soon it'll be like, yeah, you're allowed to buy a computer out of your Trump account. See? And all I'm telling you is we are going down a road that education will not even look close to what it was once when we were growing up. And I know it was different when I grew up than even when Dr. Bradley grew up. But I'm just telling you, in my opinion, dumbing down of education is accelerating, and they are using Chromebooks and other technologies to ensure that you don't think, you just do step A, B, C, D as you're told, and you don't get to think kind of outside of that framework they gave you. And that's very concerning, Doctor.
In every way, it's a form of grooming, in my opinion. It can be any kind of grooming. It can be grooming into socialism or into pornography or into anything that they want to formulate. By the way, and I know we got to end in nanoseconds here almost, I'll just give a plug. There's a book that almost nobody's ever heard of. It was written by a magnificent guy that should have been the poet laureate of the United States. His name is, write this down, E. Merrill Root. He's a brilliant thinker, eloquent, and very, very knowledgeable about moral character and everything.
And the
book that I recommend to every kid, every mom, every dad is America's Steadfast Dream. And where you talk about, it came to my mind when you were saying, here's the 5 books that come on your computer, whatever. This is a book that decades ago I had trouble finding, even in a library, because they were all being cast off. And so if E. Merrill Root's book, which is America's Steadfast Dream, which is about the moral characters, has stuff in there like, for the young man looking for a wife, for the young woman, what she should expect in a husband. All of these things that used to be talked about were expunged from the libraries probably at least 30 years ago. Where do you think you're going to find? You can still find it, by the way, I'm guessing, if you went someplace to a used bookstore. But deep thinkers, some of these great authors, are just going to be ignored for Catcher in the Rye or some stupid thing.
Well, I can say this. E. Merrill Root's book, America's Steadfast Dream.
Yep, that's what everybody...
It's nothing but a book or a vision worth defending, folks. It's something to really understand and learn about. For Dr. Bradley and Sam Bushman, hopefully this couple of segments here on TV are beneficial. Think about your child, know how much you love them, and know God loves them even more. And then take a stand and say, hey, for my children's education, I'm going to take back education. I'm going to teach them to think. I'm going to teach them the fundamentals before they ever get technology involved on a day-to-day basis. Thanks so much. I'm Sam Bushman. God save the Republic of the United States of America.